Morning, Neil. Sean here in the very heart of London. And as ever, thank you so much for joining me. Today, I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you about the fashion icon, also it be said, Vivienne Westwood. Lots of people got in touch asking me, Neil, did you meet her? Well, of course, I did indeed on quite a few occasions. But also, I met her counterpart as well, Malcolm McLaren. Do you remember him with the Sex Pistols? You're showing your age if you do. Never a good sign, is it, on these sort of things? But yes, Vivienne Westwood, I did interview her actually on a couple of occasions. A lot of people, it's strange, isn't it? You see all these gushing tributes and things like that. And sadly, when people pass on, that's what happens. People see the good in people, and rightly so. She was a groundbreaker. She did really sort of change the world of fashion, particularly in the punk movement. I don't know if you know, she wanted to be a teacher originally. That was the plot. Then she got sidelined by the swinging 60s London. Interesting here, of course, is that now people look back and say, oh, she was wonderful, she was marvellous. She was very feisty, a northerner. We got on incredibly well, but also she was very sort of strong with the people that she worked around her. How I sort of first met her, as I say, really was she came into the studios to do a chat with someone else, and then we simply got chatting, and she said, oh, I'd like to talk to you, in that very strong northern accent that she had. So we sat down and did a full interview. It is in the archive somewhere. I will find all of these things one day. But also, as I say, she was fascinating because she really did sort of reveal how she started that empire. For many people, of course, this particular shop in the 1970s was the go-to shop. It was called Sex. It was at the top of the King's Road. And basically, her and Malcolm McLaren came up with this idea simply to shock, to titillate, to get people to come in. It was the T-shirts and things like that that started the punk era. And also, she and Malcolm were very clever in creating sort of controversy, When you think about it, there was no social media, so they had to get themselves into the newspapers, nude models in the window, sort of fights outside, the latest avant-garde people going in. And it was here also, as Vivienne pointed out to me, that Malcolm got his pop idea, because the budding people, the bright young happening things of that era would come into the shop and sort of talk about starting bands and making music, making records. And it was Malcolm's idea to put together all of those sort of things. Many people don't realize he was instrumental in so many sort of spheres of music, as was she, including the Adam and the Ants. It was Malcolm, and alongside Vivienne's wacky ideas, that came to the fore, basically to create the sort of dandy highway look, the highwayman and the spaceman and all of the things that he did that became, those iconic looks. Adam himself was a genius, there's no two ways about it, but we all need somebody to guide us, and Vivienne Westwood was certainly that sort of person. Never really slowed down, she carried on with her empire, but I love the fact that they all describe her as this working class activist, as if she was doing things for the good of people. No such thing at all. She was an incredibly wealthy woman, and had some rather dubious business practices, which were highlighted by various newspapers over the years, allegedly. But what's interesting, as I say, is they paint a different picture, don't they? When you've actually met them, sat down with them, spent time with them, you realize that all these people that have made something a success of themselves owe it all to people who have money. You get connected, they invest, and then suddenly you're off. I remember, sadly, before Malcolm McLaren died, he was kind of ostracized. People thought he was yesterday's news, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's about keeping relevant, particularly when you're in those spheres of things like the world of fashion. You have to make sure that you're keeping on top of things and you're still relevant. Then what happens, if you're lucky, is you become the grand dame of fashion, as Vivienne Westwood did. It's also interesting to note, and I don't know if you find this, but people talk about her clothes, and I always thought you couldn't honestly wear them, could you? They were nice enough, but they're not the sort of everyday wear you could pop to the shops with. But people bought them as pieces, pieces to sell online. They became sort of collector's editions. So a lot of the T-shirts and the slogans that they came up with, that were then, shall we say, borrowed, re-inspired, whatever you want to call, by another wacky individual, Zandra Rhodes, if you remember the Choose Life, Catherine Hamnet T-shirts, all of that sort of stuff. Everybody looks at everybody else and creates a path. What you could say is that Vivienne Westwood certainly created that path. She left a mark on me simply because she wanted to know whether she's being paid for an interview of which she was promoting her own brand. When I pointed out, she said, well, you can't blame me for asking, can you? A true northerner through and through. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.